All right, you bunch of yahoos, strap yourselves in for another episode of Dan and Don's Toxic Masculinity.
In other words, shut up, sit up, and pay attention.
And here we are for another episode of Toxic Masculinity. I'm here with my co-hosts, the one and only Don the Predator Frye, and yours truly, Dan to be Severn. And we're here to entertain, offend, defend anyone and everyone. But here, hopefully, simply to wake most people up and to shove their face into the cow pie of reality called the truth. Sometimes it doesn't smell all that good nor taste all that good. So anyway, there's the introduction, and we have a couple guests here right now, a couple Vietnam vets. But we're here talking about war stories. We're here talking about not just war stories. We're talking about their background in being in Vietnam, and the fact that we have just the one book here that is on display right now, Vagabonds. But we also will be talking about a couple of their other books that they have also written here as well, just to bring some notoriety. But we're talking to a couple real men in today's world of where people wake up in the morning and have to identify what they are and what they're going to be doing today instead of simply just get your ass out of bed and go to work. So without further ado, I think that's enough right there, don't you think, Mr. Frye?
That's more than enough for us. And I've identified myself as a man today, as I do every other day, and I bet you guys do it too, huh?
Well, I'm not touching myself. Yes, I do.
Wait, when you identify yourself as a man, when
Well,
you
yeah,
touch
check,
yourself?
yeah. Could have gone animal over the night.
Yeah.
See if we got any horns.
You know what? I've woken up in that position before.
I'm sure you have.
That was, only twice.
But we're here. We're talking about actually, I'm not sure how many of the stories we've talked about so far that are in the book of Vagabonds that we've talked about. This book was actually written originally back. You said you during
We wrote this during the Great Quarantine.
Yeah.
We got quarantined in Tucson, and we watched all the things on Netflix, and said, well, what should we do now? Let's write a book about what happened when we got out of the military.
Well, where did you guys hail from, though? I mean, okay, that's when you guys were stationed down in Tucson, but where'd you guys come from? Where was home at that time?
At that time, I was living in California.
California?
The People's Republic of California.
All right.
I had moved to Tucson about 2 years earlier because we had been negotiating with Pinal County about taking over a big portion of Pinal Air Park and running it. And they actually had put out a request for proposals for people who wanted to take over about 40% of that property. And we wrote a proposal, and they thought about it, and then they withdrew the request, and then they hired a study group to do a study, and then they put out a new request, and we submitted another proposal, and everybody told us, you guys are in like Flynn, you've won this thing, don't worry about it. So I moved down here because I thought I was going to be
from where, though? Where you moved?
I was in Newport Beach, California.
Okay, California, all right.
Yep. And I moved down here because I thought I was going to be the general manager of a big, huge chunk of Pinal Air Park. And then they withdrew the second request and left us flat. And I had raised $1 million in earnest money that was sitting in an escrow account. And my guy that put the money up said, well, screw these people. I'm taking my money and going home. Yeah. So here I was in Tucson. About 6 months later, the same guy calls me. He's a really good guy. And he said, what are you doing, Jeff? And I said, I'm unemployed in Tucson. That's what I'm doing. And he said, well, I have an idea. I want to start a whiskey called Toxic Masculinity. Are you in? And I said, I love it. I love it. I'm totally in. So I was actually the second person involved in the dubious project of making Toxic Masculinity Whiskey, which is now going pretty good. Yeah. It's We're in 6 states with regular distribution. We're in 31 states with internet distribution, and people are starting to recognize it. And it's a long process, but it's going forward, you know.
Cool. Are you in Nevada?
Well, the guy that I was talking about was living in Nevada at the time, so our headquarters is in Nevada. But he recently moved to Tennessee and bought 260 acres of land to build our own facilities on.
Right.
And the company headquarters will soon be relocated to Tennessee. You know, you're going to move the corporation and all that.
Right.
That's not my thing. I'm a promoter.
Well, obviously, you guys were probably shooting around different types of names. What did you guys come up with the name Toxic Masculinity and then settle on it?
Charlie came up with it. I don't know how, but I love it. And, you know, he's the father of a teenage boy, and he's been really worried about what's being done to young men in this country. And he had a real, mission to use the whiskey as kind of a way to poke the far left in the eye,
Right.
and which so far has been very successful. We got
Well, I mean, that's what Don Frye and I what we look at, because we came up with the name for the podcast. Don actually came up with the name Toxic Masculinity because it's the absolute worst thing to be
We
inside
stole
the
it.
United States.
We stole it from the liberals. Yeah.
So it's kind of like going, well, I mean, obviously we must be some of the worst people in the world, so we want to lead with that. This is who we are. That's
Now that I've gotten to know you and be here in your house, you are 2 of the worst people in the world. I can attest to it.
I'll concur with that. After that trip down the cow path to get here, the only thing missing was some kind of Guernsey out there mooing into the wind.
Or a raptor.
Yeah. Well, you know, every few days you can see a bunch of black helicopters fly across and go back to the
all right.
We used
all
to
right.
be on those.
Wait, back up. First of all helicopters at distance appear to be black.
Yes.
It's just the way optics work.
But when they're
The
5
government
miles,
does not
when they're
use-
5 miles away, they are black.
They don't use black ones.
Well, I'm
No,
telling you.
They paint them up in all kinds of Gary's, Channel 5
Right.
and Evening News.
Right. Yeah. Ambulance, cover them up.
They're usually gray.
Alrighty, Danny.
Yeah,
Next.
I'm just looking at that. Couple young guys from California end up in Tucson, Arizona. Coming up with a Toxic Masculinity name. You guys are based there. I mean, I'm just going,
He was there. We've been using Marana as a training area for 26 years.
Right.
We run shooting courses there, driving courses there, training bodyguards for foreign nationals. We trained 150 bodyguards for the richest guy in Mexico at one time down there.
And we trained 1,600 Marines for pre-deployment to Iraq.
Yeah.
So September 1996 was the first time we used Marana as our training site. And it was pretty nice.
It used
in
to be
those
fun.
days. When Evergreen had it, it's not.
They-
We're still using it, but it's degraded considerably.
Yeah, you know the story behind Marana?
no.
It was a
CIA,
base
right?
in World War II. They trained fighter pilots, so all the buildings there they have these little rooms that are pilot-ready rooms. They got a bed and a bathroom, and that's it, right? And they're in the old World War II style one-story buildings and that. And then after the war, they were training. The agency was training Mountain Air, which was Tibetan resistance against the Chinese communists. They were training the Chinese forces, pilots and air crews to do airdrops and that over there in the Himalayas. And then the guy from Evergreen bought it, and it became, for us in the business, it's not Evergreen, it's Everslime. Evergreen's been sued by everybody, including the Catholic Church, and has never lost a lawsuit.
Really?
Yeah. So he had it for years. His son had a really intact collection of World War II and later aircraft. He also had 2 functional tanks and a couple of half tracks and a going to make a stop here at this glass that were out there too. And then when his son died, the old man sold all the aircraft and that. And then a new group came in and bought it. And that's who runs it now, is some air group. You know, for a long time, it was the place where the space shuttle 747 was hangared, and it's a C-check facility. Every year, or every so many cycles, every aircraft that flies with a U.S. number on it has to have a C-check, where they X-ray the wings and they go over all the engines, they clean the windows, kick the tires, and out it goes in that. So it's a C-check facility still to this day. But all the old buildings out there have been raised except for the ones just right around the airstrip. Yeah. Right now there's about 400 aircraft parked out there. That when the quarantine came along, everybody in the world that owned airplanes that couldn't fly them anymore said, "What? Time to do the C-check." Sent them down to Marana and piled in mechanics and did C-checks on everything they had in their fleet. And they're gradually starting to bleed off and go back into the industry. But if you go out there today, you see a ton of planes out there. But it's an interesting place. It's got a lot of history out there.
Right, yeah.
Well, along the same travels down that way. There's a lot of old B-52 graveyards, stuff like that.
No, that's Davis Monthan.
That's Davis Monthan.
That's the other side of Tucson, the boneyard down there.
Yep. I've seen those.
If you go down to 10, when you go by Sirocco Peak or whatever it is, Picacho Peak, you look off to the right, you'll see all these tails of big aircraft sitting out there. That's Marana, Pina Air Station.
Mile 232. So, yeah, and we went there first. Then we almost got thrown out of there, like
several times.
About a year and a half, because we started a fantasy camp. This is in the book, too. Not very much, but it's touched on. We started a fantasy camp that was selected by the Travel Channel as the #1 fantasy camp in the world. And it was Secret Agent Fantasy Camp. Oh, geez. 3 days of being a secret agent. We did driving, we did shooting, we did a hostage rescue, we did code breaking, all kinds of stuff.
Surveillance detection, dead drops, live drops, yeah.
So USA Today newspaper comes out, and they said they did a complete article with pictures about it in their Friday, which is their weekend edition, and big headlines, 4 inches tall. Spy camp, okay? And then it goes in talking about how it's at Pineland Park in Marana, Arizona, right? Well, the guy that ran the place for Evergreen pulls me aside and goes, Jeff.
Got to stop this.
Do you have any idea how much time and effort we put into trying to convince people that we are not a front for the CIA? And you come out with a freaking 4-inch banner headline, spy camp, about this place? This is not good. I'm afraid we're going to have to never let you back on this place again, right? Well, Evergreen was owned by just one guy, a guy named Del Smith, who had been on the board of directors of Air America.
Yeah.
So I had a very, very close friend who I consider a mentor. He and I go back a ways, and he was a very infamous CIA guy, wound up getting indicted by Congress over Iran-Contra and then pardoned by George Bush the first.
Well, Senator Church told him, said, well, Mr. So-and-so, I believe you only have a casual acquaintance with the truth.
So anyway, I called him and I said, hey, do you know Del Smith? And he goes, well, a little. We've met. He said, but I got a buddy of mine who plays golf with him every week. They're super tight. I said, well, can you call your buddy and have him tell Mr. Smith that I'm a cool guy and they really shouldn't throw me out of their facility? And The next time I went there, they literally had girls throwing rose petals in front of me when I was walking, man. We own that place. But unfortunately, in 2011, Evergreen gave up the lease. That's why we were angling to take it over.
Right.
They leased the airport half out, but the guys that moved into the airport didn't want the other half. So it just, and to this day, it's just sitting, going back to the desert.
Yeah.
They've never
Arrested decay.
We offered to spend $3 million a year for 4 years to completely renovate everything, and nothing.
Penal County makes the Biden administration look like a civics class. Really. I mean, the people are just, where did you people come from?
Well, we found out later there were 2 county commissioners that were making the decisions that had never even been there. Okay. It's only an hour and 15-minute drive from Florence, and they'd never come down. So what are you going to do? Politicians.
We had a lot of interesting people that came out there, though, that took the class.
How long did that camp go for? I mean, before
we started a second one in the Virgin Islands in the class started in 1998. We started a second one in 2000 in the Virgin Islands, and we closed it all down immediately after 9/11.
Our opening day was 9/11.
Yeah, yeah. It was actually 9/12.
We're standing on the top of the house we'd rented there in St. Thomas and that, drinking a cup of coffee and watched the plane fly into the World Trade Center. And I yelled down at Dennis. I said, Dennis, I think you might want to come up here and see this. He was back in the States.
I was back in the States getting brochures printed.
Yeah. And
he called me. It was 6 o'clock in the morning in California, and I was sleeping on my ex-wife's living room floor.
How fast do you think we could sell these rubber boats and Yamaha engines? Because we're going to need to.
Yeah.
No, it was done.
Well, the cruise ship, it was a cruise ship excursion. The second one, the one down in the Caribbean, was for people getting off cruise ships, guys getting off cruise ships, because we had met with the cruise industry, and they said they got all kinds of stuff that women love to do, mostly shop. But they don't have that many attractions that men like to do. So we got the perfect thing, a Pirates of the Caribbean rescue mission with paintballs and an amphibious landing on a small island, and they'll love it. And the cruise ship industry thought it was wonderful, right? But on 9/11, the cruise ship industry shut down, and they did not reopen traffic into St. Thomas until April of the following year. And we didn't have anywhere near enough money in the bank to sustain us all that time. We'd already spent $180,000 building up the stupid island. So we lost it all. We lost everything.
We set two guys down there. One was an ex-French intelligence agent.
Yeah.
And the other guy worked for the State Department. Or was State Department or
he claimed to work for the State Department.
Oddly
enough, I didn't know the State Department actually had people posing as South African officers in Namibia. But hey, what do I know?
No. He ran up a $700 bill with porno films from the rental film industry and left it.
When our other partner, the Penguini, got down there, the TV was still on in the house. And we have no idea how long ago they'd left. But they didn't even bother to turn the television on.
Wow.
But so we moved down ourselves, and we spent like 8 months getting everything ready to go and perfect. And we did a couple of test runs with cruise directors from all the cruise lines, and everything was just dead nuts perfect. And then 9/11 hit. And not only did the cruise ship industry shut down, but we shut down the one in Arizona too, because reality just interfered with the fantasy. It was too close to reality, and it just wasn't something that we felt comfortable selling as fun and games anymore.
Right.
So that was the end of that very expensive experiment.
Could you imagine losing $180,000 now?
Don, how well do you know me?
You'd be crying still.
I would have found that 108,000. You know,
He'd been curled up in the fetal position.
I
Well, the
was.
book is full of little experiences like that. We were on the cutting edge a number of times. Unfortunately, we were never able to parlay that into fortune that lasted for any length of time.
Yeah.
We got rich a couple of times.
Yeah.
but
I've
Lost.
personally made $1 million 3 times.
Yeah.
And I've personally lost $1 million 11 times. So, you know, it balances out.
No, I'm sorry. That math did not balance out.
Yeah, well, that's what we thought
You
too.
got a few more subtractions that took place in there versus the
There are
pluses.
definitely more subtractions than additions. That's for sure.
As long as you had a lot of fun along the way.
Oh yeah.
It's been fun. You read that book, you'll see. I mean, it was a wild, wild ride.
Thank you for watching another episode of Dan and Don's Toxic Masculinity. You better like, subscribe, and share, or I'm going to come to your house.